Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending NC1's rollout of a new proposal for a sweeping change to North Carolina's electricity system. We call it Sharing Solar. I am Connie Leeper, Special Advisor at NC Warren, and I'll be your host today. NC Warren, as many of you know, is a 36-year-old climate justice organization promoting clean energy and justice. After my brief overview, we'll hear from Jim Warren, the Executive Director of NC Warren, Rao Kanadina, President of Raycon Energy LLC and a consulting engineer for NC Warren, Bobby Jones, who's President of the Down East Coal Ash Environmental and Social Justice Coalition. Then we'll go to questions from reporters. Please type your questions in the Q&A function. A fuller version of this proposal will be filed later this month in Carbon Plan docket at the North Carolina Utilities Commission. A few highlights of the Sharing Solar proposal. We propose a system with no upfront costs for customers to add solar or battery storage. It will be funded through the current rate system, just as we now all pay for dirty power. This approach can expand local solar with storage across North Carolina quickly, inexpensively, and equitably, with a priority on disadvantaged communities. This is the best way to phase out fossil fuels and to help slow the climate crisis. Sharing solar allows all homes, businesses, nonprofits to benefit in many ways, even if they don't have solar themselves. Generating and storing solar where it is used helps during power outages, particularly important for emergency facilities. It avoids the year after year rate hikes in Duke Energy's high-risk plans. Sharing solar helps rooftop solar customers that Duke has suppressed for years and creates new jobs in small towns and in cities. Also, it would help Duke Energy too. This is a major shift from Duke Energy's plans to keep expanding fossil fuels, raising rates, amplifying the climate crisis that's already harming too many in North Carolina, disproportionately harming communities of color. NC Warren's proposal is calling for sharing solar to be deployed in disadvantaged communities as a top priority. Now here's Jim Warren, NC Warren's Executive Director, to share more. Jim?
Thank you, Connie. Yes, today NC Warren and allies are calling for state leaders to finally consider, instead of suppressing, a fast, cheap, and equitable way to phase out climate-wrecking power plants. All customers can benefit by sharing solar costs just like we pay for dirty power through the rate system. The global climate crisis is at a point of desperation. Power bills are soaring, and Duke Energy is aggressively expanding fossil fuels while holding back renewables. We expect a verdict soon, by the way, and from the North Carolina Court of Appeals and the net metering case, where NC Warren and allies seek to reverse Duke's attack on rooftop solar. Today, we're proposing a major shift for the state where the cost and benefit of local solar plus storage could be and should be shared by all customers the same way we pay for polluting power. There would be no upfront cost. There would be financial incentives for those who choose to go and add solar and battery storage on homes, businesses, schools, and other places. Today, we're releasing a summary of the sharing solar proposal. You can find it at ncwarren.org. We show that locating solar panels and batteries where power is used, particularly rooftops and parking areas, will generate jobs in towns and cities across the state, add protection during emergencies, and help all customers avoid the annual rate increases from Duke's rapid expansion of the use of fracked gas. So we're calling to prioritize low-income customers, those who need the help most and particularly in southeastern counties. NC Warren and allies will soon file engineer Ralph Conadino's testimony in the carbon plan, as Connie said, and it'll have more information. And we are criticizing Duke Energy for gambling on high-risk, climate-wrecking approaches while suppressing true solutions. Rao also explains how other utilities are using solar plus storage to create virtual power plants that help phase out fossil fuels and save millions. Really important, the Utilities Commission has already approved Duke Energy's proposal to expand solar power, but it's sometime in the distant future. And Duke assumes most of this would be larger than ever solar farms near country communities and preceded by billions of dollars in controversial new transmission projects that would drive up the cost of power from those solar farms. NC Warren argues that most of that approved solar and more should be local solar, where the benefits begin right away, expand quickly statewide, and are funded through the state, the electrical rate system. Now, you realize this, a key hindrance for expanding rooftop solar has long been the upfront cost. But think about it. North Carolina electricity users do not pay a large upfront cost to build giant fossil fuel and nuclear power plants. We all share those costs on our monthly power bills. Polls show that overwhelmingly North Carolinians and businesses would rather be buying clean power. And scores of solar companies and advocacy groups have already called to expand local solar power. By the way, we're honored to be joined in the Carbon Plan docket by Bobby Jones Group, plus the Charlotte NAACP and Seeds of Hope of Robeson County. We're promoting local solar and challenging Duke's plans to bulldoze farm and forest through disadvantaged communities. And as of this date, Duke Energy remains secretive about where exactly it would try to locate those new transmission corridors. Sharing solar will help all customers, and it adds much needed resiliency, especially for emergency facilities during outages. Here's one more worn out claim you've heard from Duke Energy and others, that rooftop solar can't matter much. In fact, North Carolina has twice the practical space needed to meet the state's climate goals on rooftops, parking areas, contaminated brownfields, and vacant land close to towns and cities. And that's according to federal data. The customer's solar plus storage system would belong to all ratepayers in the Duke territory, but would be used primarily by the customer. Customer would receive monthly financial incentives for Duke Energy's right to draw power from the battery at times when the regional system needs additional power. Solar companies would still compete for customers, boosted by utility marketing, and then completed projects would go into the rate system. The utility also could seek bidders for projects that it might initiate. This approach will not only help those solar companies, but it would help Duke Energy by creating a stable and profitable path forward instead of gambling on fossil fuels, experimental nuclear reactors, and controversial grid expansions. NC Warren has been proposing solar plus storage since 2017. With this new payment approach, it's way past time for the regulators and Duke Energy to finally agree to a fair consideration of local solar plus storage, especially because Duke Energy can profit from it. Finally, Duke Energy's current plan, the leaders that run the company, they have a pro-carbon plan that would ensure that North Carolina remains a top driver of the climate crisis. Thousands of state residents are still reeling from past hurricanes, even as the coming season could be our worst ever. Duke Energy leaders, state officials, the news media, and others must finally simply break out of the years of pretense that North Carolina is making a clean transition. We are not. We need to. The climate situation is desperate. This state is failing its duty, and local solar could quickly begin to change that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. And now we will hear from Rao Kanadina, President of Raycon Energy and NC1's engineering consultant. Thank you, Rao.
Yeah, thank you, Connie. Thank you, Jim, for this opportunity to share some of my findings in this testimony. If I can move to the next slide, please. So as Jim mentioned, and what I have found also from the Duke's plan, Duke has a monopoly on energy production in North Carolina, and they are heavily favoring utility scale projects, utility scale solar, utility scale natural gas. And so the North Carolina Utilities Commission and Duke have also consistently declined to consider solar plus storage solutions. And Duke's plan involves spending billions of dollars on these power plants, utility scale, and as well as new transmission infrastructure to include for that utility scale, which leads to constant rate hikes. As you might realize, new transmission adds costs. And finally, also the Duke's proposal includes these utility scale projects that are large and they could be delayed, and it might lead to not meeting climate goals for North Carolina. Next slide, please. So NC1 has an alternate proposal to Duke's carbon plan, and NC1 proposes this shared solar plus storage model to replace this Duke's monopoly-driven approach. And as Jim mentioned, the costs and benefits of this solar plus storage would be shared among all Duke Energy customers through the electric rate system, because we all realize that the price of solar is actually cheap right now. And there is no size limitation as far as solar systems are concerned. So that's another benefit of this alternate proposal. In this model also, because of this proposal, solar plus storage, it would reduce power bills and as well as provide resiliency during outages, during hurricanes and other winter storms. And it would halt the expansion of fossil fuels. Prioritizing the solar plus storage installations would be on schools, emergency services, and facilities in low-income and vulnerable communities, because that's where we can quickly see the resiliency benefits of this proposal. Next slide, please. So this proposal, solar plus storage, is basically keying off successes that we have seen in the industry from states like Vermont and California. This model is called a virtual power plant model. Some of you might have already heard about it. These virtual power plants are nothing but aggregation of decentralized solar plus storage systems, and they create a reliable and resilient power source, just like a utility scale generator would. In this virtual power plant model, the customers receive monthly payments for allowing the utility to use the solar plus storage systems during peak demand times. And that's where the real benefit lies, because all customers benefit from this improved grid resiliency. And as a result, it lowers costs for all of Duke's customers. And my final slide, this is a visual picture of how the virtual power plant looks like. It is similar to a power plant, that it does have forecasting function, it does optimize, it does aggregate, and it takes the generation from these decentralized systems like cities, residential areas, commercial facilities, industrial. And North Carolina already approved lots of solar, and what NC1 is proposing is majority of that solar should be solar plus storage, just like in a virtual power plant. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Rao. Excuse me. Here's Bobby Jones to talk about Sharing Solar Plan from the perspective of communities hurt first and worst by climate crisis and corporate polluters. Bobby Jones, Down East Coal Ash Coalition.
Thank you. You know, I'm from a community like so many other communities across the state of North Carolina, and we've been subjected to the poison of our community as a result of burning coal that went up the smokestacks. And it's been being burned in our community since the 1950s. Not only was the coal burned, it was stored right in our community and unlined pits. So our community had to endure not just the poison that was released from the smokestacks, but they also had to endure with the poison being improperly stored in our community, to the extent that even when they tried to camouflage it by making pits and ponds and putting water over it, a lot of people in our community will go and recreate in those ponds. Duke Energy didn't tell us that they were poisonous. And we've continued that, and over the last few years, they've got the great idea to start reburning this already poisonous coal ash, calling it recycling. So now they're reburning this poisonous coal ash in our community. It's bad enough that they burnt the coal from the early 50s to 2012 when they switched it over to methane. Imagine that being an improvement, methane, burning methane. Now they're reburning this coal ash that's been buried for years in order to get the carbon out of it so they can remarket it. And our community continue to suffer. You don't believe it? Look at the statistics of the people that's been sick and even died from heavy metal related diseases. I could start calling you names now and run out my time before I would be finished. So we are really excited and pleased about this notion. You know, I've often had visions of walking through my community where we had micro and nano solar in our community, where we could return to a community. Right now, we're at the mercy of Duke and Duke's monopoly, not only to provide us this unclean energy, but what they charge us for it. So it's like we're paying for our own demise. I think that shared solar plus storage is exactly what we need to address our climate and energy crisis. You know, generating and storing electricity where it's used, as well as sharing the costs and benefit of clean energy, you know, no upfront costs. I'm amazed at how Duke Energy have been able to charge us for their huge coal burning plants, their huge gas burning plants, their huge nuclear plants, but they don't have the vision. They chose not to have the vision to allow us to finance solar on top of our rooftops. Amazing. If you start looking at through the lens of corporate greed, it's kind of hard to stop looking through those lenses. You know, we're very thankful to NC Warren and the team for this well thought out, well researched, and extremely innovative solution that puts frontline communities first. Something that's never been done, clearly not by Duke Energy or the North Carolina Utility Commission. Frontline communities have never been put first. Now, don't get me wrong, we've been first to come to our community and start polluting it, first to have to deal with the negative throes of climate change. We've got people now that's unhoused and that's have been unhoused since Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Florence, 2016, 2018. You know, we've got people now that still don't have anywhere to live. We've got people now that's still struggling to survive as a result of these climate disasters, these hurricanes, as a result of climate change that's been brought on by all this poison that this dirty energy has put into our environment. This is an opportunity to have some clean energy. This is an opportunity to, the solutions does put Duke Energy's build and pollute profit monopoly on its head, turning the majority of what we need relative to a clean energy source, making it available to us. You know, we really do need to have an energy source that gets away from fossil fuels and that embrace renewables. I thank NC Warren for sharing this vision and in such a simplistic fashion, because anyone can grasp this, and Duke cannot deny this. So as a member of the community who concerned about my community, who love my community, who wants the best for my community, who want my community to have the opportunity to rise above and out of the horrible situation that all these years of dirty fossil fuel energy, I'm excited about the possibilities of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bobby, President of the Down East Coal Ash Environmental and Social Justice Coalition. And now I would like to punt it back to Jim.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that with this new program we are proposing, you're going to soon also see a new statewide campaign to lift up rooftop solar, even as Duke Energy tries to bury it. You'll see more on that soon. You can find the new sharing solar proposal at ncwarren.org. And for more information, reporters can contact me at the address on the media advisory.
And so now we will have our question and answer portion. That will be Sarah.
Thanks, Connie. Yeah, thank you so much to all of our panelists. I'm Sarah Heilman. I'm an Energy Policy Assistant at NC Warren, and we'll be going through a couple of questions. Participants, if you haven't already, you can feel free to type in questions to the Q&A function. You should see that at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if we don't get to everybody's questions, or if you think of something later, again, you can reach out to Jim at the email on the press advisory that he sent out earlier today. So panelists, I'll call out specifically if a question is directed to you, and then I'll leave it open in case anyone else wants to add on. So to get started, for Jim, can you talk more about how does this proposal interface with Duke's 2024 pilot program for rooftop solar?
Yeah, it's very different. We are glad that this short-term pilot program is in place to give a boost to the installers, the solar companies that have been hurt so badly by the net metering changes. But the pilot program is very limited, and you know, Duke Energy loves pilot programs. They do a lot of greenwashing, get a lot of public attention when the pilot is rolled out. But even if a pilot is successful, Duke Energy does not continue and expand them. So we've seen that same pattern many times.
Great, thank you, Jim. For this second question, I'll also start with you, Jim, but other panelists, please feel free to chime in if you have anything to add. Can you expand more on your claim that Duke Energy is not on the right track with this iteration of the carbon plan?
Yeah, and here's another place where Duke Energy just sort of gets away with massive greenwashing. Duke Energy is greatly expanding fossil fuels, crushing renewables. Prominent scientists have remained very critical of Duke's pro-carbon plan, and they have called on Governor Cooper to press for a genuine major course correction. So we're sharing our new sharing solar proposal with Governor Cooper and other elected officials, and the governor and the news media and others need to stop pretending that North Carolina is on the right track.
Thank you. Okay, this next question is directed to Rao. Rao, could you give some more detail on what it would look like for Duke Energy to tap into customers' batteries during peak times? Would that require a lot of new technology and expense?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's a good question. Duke already has experience with controlling customer side appliances like HVAC equipment. So this is not something new that we are proposing. In fact, the utilities in Vermont and California, based on their experience, allow or tap into the customer batteries for a 3 hours or a 4 hour duration during the times when there is the most demand on the grid. So Duke tapping into customer batteries is similar to Duke tapping into the HVAC equipment. So I think it's business as usual for Duke.
Great, thank you so much. And I see one more question for right now. I'll start with Jim for this one. Duke Energy is obligated to take the least cost path. How would this proposal be cheaper than their current proposed carbon plan?
Yeah, well, it's widely accepted now that solar power is cheaper than new gas-generated power and way cheaper than experimental nuclear reactors, cheaper than building huge multi-billion-dollar transmission grids to bring power, close to where it's being used. So local solar is the most efficient way to get clean power into the system. And by the way, that's the position of Amory Lovins and lots of other energy experts around the country, despite the massive campaign that utilities and others are pushing, that we've just got to build giant solar fields and gas units and other facilities out in rural areas, because they really want to put tens of billions into the rate system. Last point there would be, think about it. You've seen one of the photos here. Think about what it looks like if you've ever flown into Raleigh-Durham Airport or other airports. All the massive numbers of warehouse roofs, big box stores, factories, homes, all those empty rooftops that could and should be generating good, clean power, inexpensive power, and instead of pursuing a climate wrecking approach that Duke Energy has laid out for North Carolina.
Great, thank you so much.
Sarah, if I might add, I think utility scale solar projects obviously have a certain cost to them, but we need to factor in the cost of transmission to deliver that utility scale solar as well. And so in the testimony that is going to be submitted to the Utilities Commission later this month, when I compare the costs of utility scale solar plus the transmission, it is on the same level as commercial solar rooftop. So that's another benefit that we get when we have customer sited solar. There's no need for this expensive transmission.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim and Rao. And not seeing any more questions right now, so I'll just again say, if any participant has further questions, we will have more information at ncwarrant.org and more info to come there. And you can also reach out to Jim at the email on the press advisory. Thanks again, everyone, for allowing me to moderate that section, and I'll kick it back to Connie.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, everyone, the panelists, Jim, Rao, and Bobby, the reporters, the staff behind the scenes, for participating in NC1's rollout of our new sweeping proposal, this change to North Carolina's electricity system. Again, we're calling it Sharing Solar. Thank you so much for your participation.